morning, everyone. What an absolute pleasure it is to see so many of you here today. Thank you for joining us. By the time they are 30, 95% of workers in the UK will have been touched by mental health challenges, either of their own or of someone that they know. Again this year, our research for This Can Happen shows that it's not 1 in 4, but all of us who face mental health challenges. My name is Barbara Harvey, and today I have the opportunity to bring 2 of my passions together. I'm a researcher at Accenture, focusing on workplace culture, but I'm also the lead for a UK mental health programme. So today I share with you the findings of our research around mental health, focusing this year on the mental health of younger workers. I want to explore their experiences in the workplace, the pressures they are under, and the mental health symptoms that they are experiencing today. But while you may be dismayed at the scale of some of the problems I am going to describe to you this morning, you will be thrilled and excited to see how you are empowered as organizations to change the mental health outcomes for those young people. When I was growing up, when I was at school, when I was a student at university, and when I first entered the workplace, the expression mental health just really didn't exist. That is not the case for the young workers in our organizations today. Many young workers are living with the symptoms of poor mental health. Negative thoughts, trouble sleeping, poor concentration, social withdrawal, staying away from their friends, avoiding situations where they would normally have fun, losing interest in the world around them. These are some of the symptoms that the young people we spoke to in our survey of UK workers told us about. 1 in 5 workers between the age of 18 and 30 said they had self-harmed in the year leading up to our survey. In fact, what we see is it's 77%, that's nearly 8 out of 10, young workers have personally experienced a mental health challenge by the time they are 30. Right now, today, they are 2 times more likely than their more senior peers to be experiencing a mental health problem right now. 48% of them told us that they had experienced suicidal thoughts or feelings at some points in their lives up to that point. As well as experiencing their own mental health challenges, they are living in a world where poor mental health is all around them. 69% of them know someone who has tried or thought about taking their own life. And almost all know someone who's been impacted by mental health. For these young people, 95% of them have an experience with mental health already. And our data also paints a picture of lives clouded by pressure. Although most of them don't yet have the pressures of a mortgage or a family, they are feeling more pressure than their older peers. Pressure of work is the most frequently cited. But look at that figure of 39%. 4 out of 10 young workers, and these are workers aged 18 to 30, are worrying about their own health, either daily or weekly. And 32% of them worrying about the mental health, about the health of someone else, someone close to them. 1 in 4 feel lonely or isolated at work. In fact, when you look over a period of a month, they are twice as likely to cite frequent pressures as their more senior peers. But these young workers who are feeling so much pressure and showing so many signs of poor mental health aren't very likely to tell you. It's not surprising, I guess, that they are very unlikely to disclose a mental health problem during recruitment. But perhaps more worryingly is they're also the least likely of your workers to tell you at work. That might come as a bit of surprise. I think we tend to think of young people as being very open about issues like mental health. And yes, They are comfortable talking about this kind of topic with their friends and to a certain extent with their family, but they are not comfortable in the workplace. There are many, many reasons why young people don't share their mental health stories with us at work. But one of the ones that stood out for me was that 45% of young workers said that not knowing how to express themselves, how to talk about mental health, was one of the most common reasons why they didn't tell us about it. They don't have the language to put their mental health experiences, what they're feeling in their minds, into a conversation in the workplace. But these same young workers care deeply about their mental health. 9 out of 10 of them are already taking steps to look after their mental well-being. However, most of them aren't aware of what the right things to do might be. Only 40% of them said that they focus on getting good sleep, for example. A third take time to exercise or spend time outdoors or in nature. Only 12% actually limit their working hours in order to take care of their mental health. 11% practice mindfulness or yoga. 5% limit their screen time, even though our data shows that increased screen time is linked to poorer mental health outcomes. And it isn't hard to see why they struggle to know what's best. Even amongst youngest workers, we find their level of understanding of mental health issues is very limited. Only 18% of the workers aged 18 to 25 in our study had advice about taking care of their mental health while at school, and only 40% while they were at university. Many young people start work without any knowledge of how to keep a healthy mind in the fast-paced, ever-on workplaces and lives that we all lead today. So now you have the facts about younger workers. They experience more mental health challenges, feel more pressure, are hesitant to tell you what's going on. They are proactive, but they may not know what to do. Employers have a huge gap to fill if they want a happy, productive workplace. But less than 5 in 10 of those employers, even today, almost 2 years exactly on after the Stevenson Pharma Review reported, are actually experiencing workplaces where there is a program and support around mental health. It's not a great story, is it? But I'm pleased to say there's some really, really extraordinary news. Zoe talked about empowering you to make a difference. And I feel that we are very much empowered as employers to make a real difference. And just have a look at what our data tells us. We asked the 1,800 workers in our survey 6 questions to establish what kind of support their culture was giving them around mental health. And we were able to divide our sample into 2. Those that were sitting in cultures where there was a lot of support around mental health, and those that were sitting in cultures where there was less support around mental health. That's what you see on the screen behind me right now. But just look at what happens when you increase the support around mental health. The incidence of employees with recent experience of mental health conditions goes down. Almost all young workers feel they are able to cope with the everyday stresses at work. And perhaps even more astonishingly, those with mental health conditions feel much more able to cope in the workplace. They are also 4 times more likely to say that work is positive for their mental health. As employers, you really do have the power to make a difference. And in all of the research that we looked at, it was the story around leadership that absolutely shone out to me. It seems that it is leaders that truly make the difference to the culture of their organization. I'm just going to put these figures up. I think you'll agree with me. The differences are utterly striking. In supportive organizations, 9 in 10 individuals describe their leaders as open, warm, human when it comes to talking about mental health. and almost all have a senior person that they could turn to for help if they have a problem with their mental health in the workplace. There are 3 steps that employers can take to change the lives of their employees. I think it's very clear that you have to start with leadership. It is possible to create an environment where work is a positive influence on your workers' mental health. We must address the knowledge gap. Young people are coming into our workforce without the knowledge to know how to take care of their mental health. But we also need to co-create and tailor solutions. And here's where I start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I'm standing here quite a long time since I went to university and when I first started work, and while I might think I'm still 30 years old, I'm actually not. So I would like to invite to the stage 2 of my colleagues, Stuart and Aaron Sherwood. And they are 2 of our mental health allies, and they are going to join me for a conversation on the stage to talk about what it's like to be a young person in the workplace today. Welcome, Stuart. Welcome, Aaron. Hello.
Hello. Why are we here again?
Wow, slightly terrifying.
Thank you both so much for joining me today and helping us put the voice of younger people onto the stage this morning rather than everyone just listening to me ramble on for another 10 minutes. Aaron, I'd love to start with you. I met Aaron about a year ago, and we met during one of our Mental Health Allies training session. And Aaron, tell us what brought you into that training session that morning and why you decided to become a mental health ally for us.
Sure. Well, if we turn back the clock slightly to 2015, where I found myself in a university lecture hall, where I had what I now know to be a panic attack. I had flashbacks to an experience where I was hospitalized for a prolonged period of time. And these thoughts and feelings began to escalate to the extent where it was taking over my life. And I thought that people would be judging me. I wondered the effect that would have on my career. But it was only by being open and honest with my family and friends where I accepted help. I got therapy. And I'm in a position today where actually it doesn't really impact me very much. But I have one message. All of us in our lifetime will experience some form of trauma. I was diagnosed with PTSD. You know, this isn't something which we should shy away from. And I wanted to make a difference. And to do that, our Mental Health Allies program naturally seemed like the best place to come. So this was kind of one of the main reasons for me to be part of that growing network of brilliant people, really.
And Aaron stepped up at the end of that session a year ago and offered to host a workshop around PTSD so that others in our organisation could understand a little bit more about it. And his courage encouraged many others to open up too. Now, Stuart, you and I met in a slightly different capacity. Stuart is the lead for our carers network, and he and I met in that capacity. So, Stuart, what caused you, or what led you to set up the carers network, to lead it, and also to become a mental health ally?
It's been an interesting journey, I'll say that much. The reason it's interesting is that, unlike a lot of people that probably sit in this room, or a lot of people who often speak, I find my experience was born out of, had a lot of exposure to mental health for quite a long time in my life, and I've never personally suffered from a mental health condition. So you're all sat there pondering and wondering why. For around 8 to 9 years of my life, I was defined as what was known as a mental health carer. It was for about 6 to 7 years of my life, between when I was at university and to when I first joined Accenture. I was caring for an ex-partner who suffered from an eating disorder, anorexia, and also suffered from bouts of depression. And in a more recent capacity, in the last sort of 18 months, my mum has been diagnosed with severe depression and also a very rare variety of bipolar disorder. And for a really long time, I rejected the idea that I am a carer. If I had thought back on what a carer really meant, to me it was somebody that looked after an elderly person, be it a parent or or a child or somebody that suffers from some kind of physical disability, where you absolutely have to be there every day. I didn't recognize what I was doing was that. And as part of that meant that I never really shared with people. I didn't really talk about what I was going through, the isolation I felt a lot of the time, because to me, this was not my story. It was not really for me to share, so I kept it in. And that really changed for me. I had a big catalyst trigger point in my life in around October 2015. It's an interesting date because it's actually when I first joined Accenture. And I remember seeing an advert for some mental health ally training. And I remember connecting to it and going, something's drawing me to this. I need to attend. I sat in that room of about 30 people and listened to the most raw and candid stories of what people had gone through, their journeys, their experiences. And I remember thinking, wow, if these people are able to share what they're going through in such an open manner in this very safe environment, what is really stopping me? And from that point onwards, I decided to make a change. And that change was, if these people can talk in a room, I can now talk not only in a room of my own about what I've been through and my experiences, but I need to start having those conversations with friends. I need to start having those conversations with family. And even if they're not initially that comfortable with it, I have to keep pushing and driving away, because otherwise no one will openly talk about it. Because for once I felt like I wasn't alone and I was safe. And that was just a major change in my life. And I've decided to make and change and use that experience to make some real positive change within our own organization. I realized that there wasn't really much of a network for people with carers. So I've spent the last sort of 1 to 2 years as the carers lead with a fantastic team around me. We've spent some time creating a much safer and more supportive environment for people who are carers. We decided to create a much larger awareness campaign for what that really means, because a lot of people don't actually know. And the big crux of difference for me is that we want to make big policy change throughout our organization to enable our company to be a place where carers can work freely.
Well, the good news for you, Stuart, is that our CEO is sitting just over there right now.
I know. I panicked when I saw him walk in early and realized what I was going to say.
Thank you. And Stuart does make a tremendous difference with the carers in our organisation. And he didn't just end up speaking out to friends and family and a few people at Accenture. There's 1,000 people in this room this morning that you're sharing your story with. Thank you. Aaron, when you think about organisations like ours, what is it that we can do to make it safer for people like yourselves to open up about what's happened to them?
One thing I really like about coming to work is that I'll open the front door and you're instantly greeted by a number of people with brightly coloured lanyards. One is an LGBT ally lanyard, and the other is our Mental Health Allies Network. From top floor to shop floor, it's really easy to identify who is a mental health ally. I love working in that culture because it means actually I'm empowered to put my hand up and say, actually, you know what, I'm struggling, and I know exactly who to go to at any given point. It's that culture where, you know what, I can have fun at work. We call this truly human at Accenture, where you can just bring your entire human self to work and not be fearful about, you know, being who you are. In all honesty, I love actually putting my hand up and saying, you know what, I've had a problem, but if you're mindful of that, actually we're going to have a really great ride, because collectively as a team, as I said earlier, you know, all of us have mental health, and I think that allows us to be hugely productive. So I think it's those combination of factors which, from my opinion, purely talking from an Accenture perspective, is really powerful.
Thank you. Leaders. What difference do leaders make, and can they make, and how do you see leadership within the organisation?
Interesting. It's almost like we've rehearsed this. I genuinely have this written down in case anyone wants to challenge it. So, to me, leaders are people who encourage you to bring your true self to work. They're people who don't make you leave the negative sides or the things you perceive as negative to yourself at the door, and that you have to lie. My view on leadership has changed a lot, especially in the last 18 months, the last 2 years. If you Google leader or examples of leaders, you get all the ultra classics coming up. you get prime ministers, you get presidents, you get CEOs of large organizations, people at the very top of their tree. And I'm going to stress this one importantly so Ollie doesn't come and question me for it later. That doesn't mean they're not leaders, by the way, in my eyes. But what I think leaders are becoming are people who promote and invite positive social change, positive change within organization. They are people who refuse to accept the status quo. And that's what's really important to me. And to give you a very modern example of it, and apologies if anybody here is either not a sports fan or does know quite a little bit about it, but it's somebody like Megan Rapinoe. She is a very prominent figure within the LGBTQ plus sort of group, as well as also gender equality. And if you actually look at her on face of fact, she's not the captain in her sports team for the United States women's team. They won the World Cup, but she wasn't the captain. So by factor of leader, it would have been Alex Morgan. And to me, that it starts to break down the idea of anybody can be a leader. It does not matter who you are. And in my eyes, within our organization, the Mental Health Ally program and any ally is a leader. It doesn't matter if you're an analyst and you're brand new to the business or whether you're an MD who's been there and tenured for years. You have the ability to make a change. You're somebody who wants it to be better. And the big difference, and I suppose where everyone's probably pondering where I'm going with this, is that with those leaders, with those people pushing positive change, you need to make sure that the decision makers within your organization are following that journey as well, that they are bought into the challenge and as ready and as trained to deal with that challenge as well. And for me in my organization, I've been very lucky that a recent example with my dad, he suffered a stroke. And as soon as I told my MD, my line manager, their first words were, family first. Go and deal with it. And that hasn't been the case for my girlfriend. So for me, I think that we're getting there and we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that resonates quite closely with me. And Barbara, you mentioned, I've only been really with Accenture just over a year now. And I was really super impressed 3 months in, because I had the pleasure of meeting our aerospace and defense industry lead. And I was terrified about meeting this man. But actually, we sat down and literally within an hour we clicked. And he told me about his mental health and his battle with his own mental health. And he said to me, Aaron, you make me feel like Steve Jobs. I said, what do you mean? And he said, we don't hire smart people so I can tell you what to do. We hire smart people so you can tell me what to do. And that moment I joined his practice. That's why I picked this company, because I believed that there are leaders in this company which sort of took this hierarchical view out the way. And actually, we're all human beings. We work together on this. I love working with him. I think he's brilliant. And I think, more leaders should really embrace that culture.
Thank you. And thank you both so very, very much. At this point, I want to reflect a little bit about what we're talking about so far as work. But actually, our mental health journeys begin long, long before we enter the workplace. And I would love to introduce you to Sally Boyle. She is International Head of Human Capital Management for Goldman Sachs. And they have launched a really inspiring program around universities and young people with mind. So thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Aaron. I'm going to let you exit stage right and Sally to join us stage left. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yes, cheers.
Aren't they amazing? Two incredible colleagues. Thank you both so very, very much for joining me today. And thank you, Sally, and how lovely to see you. I'm glad to have you on the stage today. What was it that led you to take this extraordinary initiative with Mind and to launch this new program?
So the impetus for this program really was twofold. It started with our senior leaders, the partners in our organization in Europe, who basically said that they would like to do something to support the mental health for young people. And the reason really for that was because they had heard from our young workers who were coming in from universities that actually universities didn't really provide very much support for them in terms of mental health. And actually back to your discussion around language and support, they really didn't feel they had any. So the two came together and we were very keen to launch something to support students so that as they arrive in our workplace, they have the language and some of the help that they need in order to, help them with their own mental health as they come into the workplace. And we also, hire an awful lot of graduates a year, so we wanted to send a really strong message to our graduates that this is something that's important to us.
And it's interesting because many of them are now asking us about our mental health
Sure.
programs when they come into the workplace. So when they get there, Sally, what is it that you offer as an organisation to support them through those early years?
So we have a number of sort of physical facilities that help support our young people. We have tremendous on-site medical facilities, including general practitioners, psychologists, an on-site psychiatrist, childcare facilities, because we know that sometimes that can present challenges, and obviously fitness facilities on site. But we've also spent a good amount of time thinking about our managers and our leaders and educating our managers and leaders around understanding their people and understanding mental health and being able to signpost to anybody who is struggling where they should go and how they should get their support. So about half our managers so far have been trained on mental health, and we're looking to train the rest. And we've also initiated a program of training mental health first aiders. So we want mental health first aiders across all of our businesses to be very visible on the floor so that people know that they are individuals that they can go to if they need some help and support.
That sounds like a brilliant program. And in our research, we saw very clearly that leaders can play the most phenomenal role in changing the culture of their organisations. What do you see, and what's your view on what a CEO can and should be doing around this?
Yeah, I think your research is absolutely spot on in terms of, the importance of senior leaders being role models in relation to mental health. Certainly our CEO about 6 or 7 years ago said to me, Sally, this is a really, really important topic for me. I want you to help us become better at dealing with mental health issues and really getting the message out to our people. And he was very instrumental in really driving this program, which this partnership with Mind, where we are looking to help students at 10 universities and staff at 10 universities really understand mental health better.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me today. I'm going to close the session now with a final thought, and that is, you have the power to make a difference, to change the lives for students at universities through programs like the Goldman Sachs Work with Mind, to work with schools, and also to change the outcomes in mental health for the people who work in your organisation. Lead it from the top, drive it throughout the organisation. Culture change means better mental health. Thank you.